My name is High Definitions, and I have a question for you. What if the stories passed down as myths weren't just fantasy, but distant memories of real events? Think about the universe of stories we inherit from our ancestors. We often dismiss them as simple fables, creative explanations for a world they didn't fully understand. But let's apply a bit of cosmic perspective here. What if these narratives are not just stories, but data? Encoded, allegorical data, passed down through generations, preserving the memory of immense, world-altering events that happened so long ago. Their factual origins have been lost to time, leaving only the legend behind. Across ancient cultures, from the Fertile Crescent to the Andes, you find these recurring themes: tales of great floods, lost cities swallowed by the sea, gods descending from the sky, and epic wars that shaped the very identity of a people. These stories might contain more truth than we once thought. Science, in its relentless pursuit of evidence, is beginning to peel back the layers of these myths. Archaeology unearths buried cities, geology reveals evidence of catastrophic floods and volcanic eruptions, and astronomy can even trace the echoes of cosmic impacts in ancient prophecies. The universe, it seems, has a long memory, and so do we, even if we don't always realize it. In this video, we're going on a journey of discovery. We will uncover 10 ancient myths that might actually be based on real history. We'll travel from the sunken utopian island of Atlantis to the legendary battlefields of the Trojan War, exploring stories that blur the line between legend and legacy. We're going to use the tools of science to investigate the tales our ancestors told, to see if we can find the kernel of truth, the historical event that ignited the human imagination and created these timeless myths. So, strap in. Let's explore where story ends and history begins. Let's begin with perhaps the most famous lost civilization of all, Atlantis. The philosopher Plato, writing around 360 BC, is our primary source. He described Atlantis as a formidable naval power, a utopian society with advanced engineering, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He tells a story of its hubris and its eventual downfall, when the island in a single day and night of misfortune was swallowed by the sea and vanished. For centuries, this was considered pure allegory, a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride. But what if Plato wasn't just inventing a story? What if he was recounting a history passed down to him? The details he provides are so specific it's tantalizing to think they might be real. The search for Atlantis has led people all over the world, but modern science offers a compelling candidate right in the Aegean Sea. Around 1600 BC, the island of Thera, now known as Santorini, experienced one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in human history. This cataclysmic event triggered massive tsunamis, obliterated the advanced Minoan civilization on the island, and sent clouds of ash across the region, potentially causing climate shifts and societal collapse. The sudden, violent destruction of a powerful island civilization by the sea? That sounds remarkably similar to Plato's account. Perhaps the memory of the Minoan collapse passed down through generations for over 1,000 years became the seed for the legend of Atlantis. Now, let's talk about a story that appears in some form in almost every corner of the globe, a great world-drowning flood. You know the biblical story of Noah's Ark, but similar tales exist in the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia, in Hindu texts about Manu, and in Greek, Norse, and Native American legends. The sheer ubiquity of this myth is staggering. It begs the question, were all of our ancient ancestors just coincidentally terrified of floods? Or did they all experience something so profound that it became embedded in their collective memory? A global flood is geologically unlikely, but a series of massive regional floods? That's a different story. Let's wind the cosmic clock back to the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago. As the massive glaciers that covered much of the planet began to melt, global sea levels rose dramatically, by hundreds of feet. For the early humans living in coastal communities and river valleys, this wouldn't have been a gradual change. It would have been a relentless, terrifying encroachment of the sea, swallowing entire landscapes over the course of generations. Imagine watching your world slowly disappear beneath the waves. Furthermore, geological evidence points to specific megafloods, like the sudden inundation of the Black Sea Basin around 5600 BC, which would have been a truly apocalyptic event for the people living on its shores. These real, catastrophic events are likely the historical anchors for our global flood myths. Sing, O goddess, the anger of Achilles. So begins Homer's Iliad, an epic poem of gods, heroes, and a decade-long war fought over a beautiful queen. For a long time, the Trojan War was thought to be just that, a magnificent piece of fiction. The idea of a giant wooden horse of gods intervening in mortal combat seemed purely mythological. There was no proof that the city of Troy or the war itself ever existed. It was a foundational story for Western civilization, but a story nonetheless. That is, until a determined amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann decided to take Homer at his word. Following the geographical clues in the Iliad, Schliemann began excavating a mound in modern-day Turkey called Hizarlik in the 1870s, and what he found changed history. He uncovered the ruins of a city, not just one but multiple layers of cities built on top of one another. One of these layers, now known as Troy 7A, shows clear evidence of a violent end. We're talking widespread fire damage, arrowheads embedded in the walls, and skeletons left in the streets. It dates to the late Bronze Age, roughly the same period Homer's epic is set in. While we haven't found a giant wooden horse, we have found a fortified city that was very likely destroyed in a major war. The myth, it seems, was a poetic remembrance of a very real, very brutal conflict. The biblical story of the Tower of Babel is a fascinating one. It describes a united humanity speaking a single language who migrate to the land of Shinar and begin to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens to make a name for themselves. According to the tale, God, seeing their arrogance, confounds their speech so they can no longer understand each other and scatters them across the face of the earth. It's a powerful myth explaining the origin of different languages and cultures. But you know, could this story be rooted in the awe-inspiring architecture of ancient Mesopotamia? Many scholars believe the inspiration for the Tower of Babel was a real structure, the great ziggurat of Babylon, known as Edamananki, which means Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. This massive stepped pyramid was dedicated to the god Marduk and would have dominated the skyline, appearing to reach for the heavens. Babylon itself was a sprawling cosmopolitan hub, a melting pot of people from all over the ancient world, speaking a multitude of languages: Akkadian, Aramaic, Sumerian, and more. It's easy to imagine how an outsider visiting this bustling metropolis could perceive the cacophony of languages as a form of divine confusion. The myth, then, may not be about a literal divine intervention, but a powerful metaphor for the overwhelming scale and cultural complexity of the mighty Babylonian Empire. Before the Iliad, before the Bible, there was the Epic of Gilgamesh. This Mesopotamian masterpiece is one of the earliest surviving works of literature, telling the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who embarks on a quest for immortality after the death of his friend, Enkidu. The epic is filled with gods, monsters, and a great flood story that actually predates the biblical account of Noah. For a long time, Gilgamesh himself was considered as mythical as the bull of heaven he battles in the story. He was a literary character, a symbol of the human struggle against mortality. But archaeology has a way of, well, turning fiction into fact. Inscriptions have been discovered that confirm the existence of a real king named Gilgamesh, who ruled the Sumerian city-state of Uruk around 2700 BC. The Sumerian king list, an ancient stone tablet, lists him as the fifth king of the first dynasty of Uruk. Archaeologists excavating the ruins of ancient Uruk have even uncovered massive defensive walls, just as the epic describes Gilgamesh building. This doesn't mean he wrestled with gods or journeyed to the underworld, of course. What it suggests is that the core of the myth is built around a real historical figure, a powerful and influential king whose life and achievements were so grand, they became the stuff of legend, embellished and mythologized over centuries. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most dramatic tales of destruction in the Old Testament. These two cities of the plain are described as hubs of wickedness, which God ultimately obliterates with a rain of fire and brimstone. Lot's wife, looking back against divine instruction, is famously turned into a pillar of salt. For millennia, this has been seen as a divine parable about sin and punishment. But could a real, natural catastrophe of biblical proportions have inspired this story? Some archaeologists and scientists now think so. The focus of this research is a site in modern-day Jordan called Tal el-Hammam. Excavations there have revealed a large, prosperous Bronze Age city that was suddenly and utterly destroyed around 1650 BC. The evidence is chilling. Pottery shards are melted into glass, building foundations are vaporized, and human remains show signs of extreme trauma. Scientists studying the site have proposed that the city was wiped out by a cosmic airburst, likely a meteor or comet that exploded in the atmosphere with the force of thousands of atomic bombs. Such an event would have created a superheated blast wave and rained down burning salt-rich material from the nearby Dead Sea, a literal rain of fire and brimstone. The memory of this terrifying, instantaneous destruction could easily have been passed down and interpreted as an act of divine wrath. Let's travel north, to the cold, stark world of Norse mythology. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, is the Viking apocalypse. It's a prophecy of a great battle where gods like Odin, Thor, and Loki will fall. The world will be consumed by fire and flood, and will ultimately be reborn from the ashes, green and fertile. It's a deeply pessimistic yet hopeful saga of cosmic destruction and renewal. Unlike the other myths we've discussed, it's a story about the future, but its origins might lie in the very real catastrophic climate events of the past. Consider the harsh realities of life in ancient Scandinavia. The climate was precarious, and a single bad winter could mean starvation. Now imagine a major volcanic eruption somewhere in the world, like the one in Iceland in 536 AD, which spewed so much ash into the atmosphere that it created a volcanic winter, dimming the sun and causing crop failures and famine across the northern hemisphere. This event, known as the Fimbulwinter in Norse lore, is the prophesied prelude to Ragnarok. The descriptions in the poems, a sun that turns black, a world sinking into the sea, are hauntingly similar to the real-world effects of a massive volcanic eruption, or even the rapid climate shifts of events like the Younger Dryas period. So Ragnarok may be a cultural memory of climate catastrophe, encoded as a myth about the death of gods. The legend of the Phoenix is a beautiful and enduring one, found in Greek, Roman, and later traditions. It's this magnificent bird with fiery plumage that, supposedly, lives for 1,000 years. At the end of its life it builds a nest of spices, sets it ablaze, and is consumed in the flames. From the ashes, a new, young phoenix arises, destined to live another long life. It's, the ultimate symbol of immortality, resurrection, and cyclical renewal. It's a powerful metaphor, but like a lot of metaphors, it might actually have its feet planted in the real world, or at least, in an older, related myth. The inspiration for the phoenix almost certainly comes from the ancient Egyptian deity, the Bennu bird. The Bennu was a heron-like bird associated with the sun god Ra, creation and rebirth. It was said to have emerged from the primordial waters of chaos at the dawn of creation, and to perch on the Benben stone, the first mound of earth to rise from the waters. Its cry was even said to have set creation in motion. The Egyptians linked the Bennu to the annual flooding of the Nile, an event that brought destruction but also deposited fertile silt, ensuring the rebirth of the land and the continuation of life. So, the story of the phoenix then might just be a Hellenized version of this Egyptian concept, a powerful symbol representing the very real, observable cycles of destruction and rebirth that governed ancient life along the Nile. The Mahabharata is, honestly, one of the two major Sanskrit epics of ancient India, a colossal work of poetry, philosophy, and storytelling. At its heart is the Kurukshetra War, this massive 18-day battle between two groups of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, for the throne of Hastinapura. The scale is immense, involving millions of warriors, divine weapons, and some really complex moral dilemmas. For centuries, it's been revered as a sacred text. But the question of its historicity has always lingered. Was this epic conflict a work of pure imagination, or maybe the embellished memory of a real war? Intriguingly, many of the key locations mentioned in the epic are real places in modern India. Kurukshetra, the battlefield itself, is a recognized pilgrimage site. Cities like Hastinapura and Indraprastha have been identified with archaeological sites. While evidence for a single massive war on the scale described is elusive, archaeological findings from the period, around 1000 to 800 BC, do show a consistent culture known as the painted grayware culture across this region. Some scholars actually theorize that the Mahabharata may not describe a single war, but is this grand composite narrative weaving together the memories of numerous smaller, real-life tribal conflicts and power struggles that took place during the Indian Iron Age. The epic then would be a poetic consolidation of a long and violent period of history. Finally, let's turn to a living tradition, a myth that is also a prophecy for the future. The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. The Hopi people of the American Southwest have a rich oral tradition describing the cycles of the world. Their prophecies tell of a blue star Kachina, a spirit that will appear in the heavens to signal the end of the current world age and the beginning of the next. When the blue star appears, it will be a time of great purification and change for all humanity. This is a profound spiritual belief, but from an astronomical perspective, it's, impossible not to wonder, what kind of celestial event could inspire such a prophecy? The description of a bright new star appearing in the sky strongly evokes a real astronomical event. It could be a supernova, the explosive death of a massive star, which would suddenly appear as a brilliant point of light, visible even during the day, before fading. Or perhaps more likely, it could be a comet. Comets, with their bright heads and long, often bluish tails, appear unpredictably and have been seen as omens and harbingers of change across cultures for millennia. Halley's Comet, for example, or the spectacular appearance of Comet Hale-Bopp in 1997, fit the description well. It's plausible that the Hopi ancestors witnessed such a stunning cosmic event and encoded its memory into their sacred traditions as a powerful symbol of transformation, a celestial clock marking the end of one era and the dawn of another. So, as we've seen, the line between myth and history is often thin, perhaps even non-existent. It's more of a spectrum, really. Through the rigorous lenses of archaeology, geology, and astronomy, we're finding that many ancient legends may carry fragments of truth, echoes of real people, real places, and real catastrophes, all encoded in the rich symbolic language of storytelling. These myths weren't just idle fantasies, they were the science of their day. They were humanity's first attempt to record its own history, to make sense of a universe that was often as terrifying as it was beautiful, and to pass that hard-won knowledge down to the next generation. These stories are a testament to the resilience of human memory. They remind us that our ancestors were keen observers of their world, from the rising of the floodwaters to the appearance of a new star in the heavens. They took these profound events and wove them into narratives that could survive for millennia, ensuring that the memory of what happened would not be lost, even if the literal facts were transformed into metaphor and allegory. In a way, by investigating these myths with modern tools, we are simply translating the data our ancestors left for us, reconnecting with the deepest parts of our shared human story. The quest to understand our past is a journey that never ends. Each discovery, each uncovered ruin, each new scientific insight brings these ancient stories into sharper focus. Which myth do you think hides the most truth? Was Atlantis a real place? Did a meteor really destroy Sodom? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for more ancient mysteries revealed. Stay curious.